On this episode of Today from Bowie, we highlight the work of Brian A. Thompson, senior African American, to design a U.S. banknote. Alongside hosts Gabby Brown and Keva Wright, Mr. Thompson gives Bowie State University students encouraging words on how to succeed in the world of artistic design.
It's a bigger world. There's so many other things that we actually can be doing and getting ourselves involved in, like footwear design, industrial design. Don't just shun that away because it's not popular.
Right.
No one knew about being a banknote designer, but now for some reason it's popular. Just go in there and make it your own.
Although Brian Thompson has made history in designing U.S. currency, his main focus is leaving an impact through his art. So the next time you make a purchase with a U.S. $100 bill, be sure to think of the historical artist, Mr. Brian Thompson. For the Metro News Report, I'm Taylor Carter.
Welcome to Today from Bowie. I'm Gabby Brown.
And I'm Keva Wright. And today we have Senior Journeyman Banknote Designer Brian Thompson. Thank you for joining us today, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good.
That's good. That's good. You ready to get started?
Sure.
All right.
So what does a Senior Journeyman Banknote Designer do?
A journeyman banknote designer is a person who literally designs currency for the United States government. It's been several of us before, but it's been technically 3 African Americans. I was trained by 2 of them, Mr. Ronald Sharp and Clarence Hobart, who are no longer with us. I found out they passed about a year ago, and they trained me. So I'm the 3rd African American to ever be employed there as a banknote designer. And I was actually fortunate to be trained by the first 2, which was an amazing experience.
That's extraordinary.
I'm going to say sorry for your losses, by the way. But as far as being the only African American out of 4 being a banknote designer, how does that, make you feel? How does that affect you?
It doesn't affect me at all. Focus is on the job, mainly just, and I have a saying for me, it's always let your work speak for you. And the reason why I think that's a premise for me is because people can't look at your skin color when they value in your work.
Right.
So if they look at your work, who cares what color that person is?
Absolutely.
And then they're surprised when they find out to a certain, not all, but some are surprised that a person of color actually achieved that.
I'd say, yeah, we're very underestimated in certain fields because of the color of our skin. So the fact that we can prove that we are just as good or even better as anybody else is amazing. So the fact that you are here today to show, basically the students of color, at a HBCU, that you can be anything you want to be and your skin color shouldn't define, what other people see you or value you as.
Absolutely. And honestly, we'll get to those other questions, I'm sure, but I went to a HBCU as well, went to UDC, University District of Columbia.
Okay. Shout out District of Columbia, okay.
Here at home.
So back to you being a banknote designer, what is the creative process like?
The creative process is very interesting. If anybody's ever done a puzzle before, and if you did a 1,000-piece puzzle and you lay it out, that's pretty much banknote design. There's so many pieces, so many components to it. And you literally have to almost put these pieces, together in order to come up with a banknote. It's that difficult. You know how long it takes to do a puzzle? It takes a great deal of time. Same thing with currency design.
So it's similar to a puzzle, like do you have the portrait already and then you have to put it together, or?
There's a lot to it. There's so many layers to banknote design that it's just unbelievable. It's like if you've ever read any interviews or any different magazines that I've actually talked about, I say it's the most difficult thing you've ever put together. It's the most difficult puzzle that you've ever put together in your entire life, because there's so many components and pieces to it, and the canvas size is this big.
So you're working with kind of like a 1,000-piece puzzle in a
Literally.
sense. But it's amazing because I didn't even know that was that much work that goes into it. I didn't even know about the engraving and designing part, that there's actually designers in the government that design the money. So it's amazing to learn this new information, and then of course being African American, learning somebody that looks like us and walks like us is in this type of field. So it shows that there's no bounds and no limits to what we can possibly do.
Absolutely, and that was one thing I said I wanted to definitely achieve was to make sure that I spoke when I was alive, because you only hear about affluent or people that have done things in history and African American history when they've passed, and then the story gets skewed or not even told. So I made it a point that when I did make African American history from designing the 100, that I was going to be vocal about it, and I was definitely going to highlight myself at HBCUs to push the envelope that it's so much more out there in the art field, that just don't segue yourself to just doing t-shirt design or what, the areas of design that they want to just put us in. There's a bigger world out there in the world of design. And this is definitely one of those places where you really can thrive. It just takes a long time to get through it.
I'm about to say, yeah, I love that. I love how you can put art into anything. It's amazing.
So your shirt says, "I make my ancestors proud." Do you
Absolutely.
feel like this career is definitely making your ancestors proud?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So was this always your dream? Like,
no, honestly, if it wasn't for my father, who worked at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, he was actually he was an electromat at first, then a cylinder maker, and he made the cylinders that were actually on the presses while I was growing up. And I went to Suitland High School, went to Suitland Visual Performing Arts High School. I got to get them their plug, because that's where I went to school. And I was the first art student to go through that program with Dr. Thompson and Dr. Camilla Doty. So we were kind of like we were like the brain children, or the ones that they were kind of crafting this whole, School of the Arts behind. So we were the first class to actually graduate from Suitland that went through that program. And what was unique about it is that they set up our portfolios that were comparable or equal to any college student that had a 4-year degree. We were coming out of high school and we could compete with anyone in the country.
I say that's amazing. The fact that you could go straight into it and get the experience that you needed in order to go forth within your career. So as far as that is concerned, what was the intake process like for you being selected as a banknote designer?
Had to put in a portfolio and then be selected as a apprentice. So the apprenticeship process was a 7-year apprenticeship where you were evaluated every 6 months. So what that looks like is I do the work. Every 6 months, I'm sitting with a panel of individuals, bosses, and they were sitting at one end of the table, and I'm sitting at the other end, displaying the work that I've done. And at that time, they would either keep you or let you go.
and they do that every 6 months for
They
7
used
years.
to. Long time ago they did, and I was actually very instrumental in getting rid of that, because I rewrote the entire program for the apprenticeship program, where that was no longer a big deal. If you achieve the things that we learned within the 7 years, then you will become a journeyman banknote
I was
designer.
about to say, yeah, because you're going through the process, getting the experience, so you should be able to at least be given a chance to, see it through in the career. Yeah. So that's amazing how you were able to get into there, get behind the scenes, and then, change whatever needed to be changed. So that way, there could be more opportunities. So that way someone wouldn't be kind of looked over because of, the work.
And it's not even really a thing of being looked over. It's that you have to really focus on details of the job. If you miss some very key details, imagine millions of dollars being printed, and you make one mistake. They got to throw all that money away because you made that mistake.
Wow.
So you have to be very in tune to details that you're designing, and be very careful about all of the different steps that it takes. Currency is almost like layering your favorite sandwich. If somebody works at Subway, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
You got the bread, you got all this meat, you got the cheeses. So it's so many layers to it, and you got to make sure that it's crafted the right way, or it's done the right way. Because if you miss one thing,
You got to start all over.
Yeah.
see, you really don't get that opportunity. Sometimes you get to start over, but if that mistake was made, now you've messed up how much money? You messed up so many skids of currency, now what?
Right.
And then it falls on you for not paying attention. So what the apprenticeship program does, because it's a apprenticeship, it's on the job training.
Right.
And people should not be scarce towards getting into being an apprentice. There's nothing wrong with that. It's on the job training. So it allows you to make some of those mistakes that you may make on the job. And it lets you change and say, okay, what did I do wrong here? Now you have a journeyman that says, this is what you did wrong. And it's like right there in real time. Instead of learning it from a textbook, it's real time.
Right.
And that's the best experience for you.
So would you say that's the hardest part about the job is once you've gone through all those layers, you make that mistake, now you gotta start all over again?
It's kind of in the back of your head when you become a journeyman, because you've known throughout your apprenticeship there are certain mistakes you just can't make.
Right.
And with technology constantly changing, you have to always be studying. You have to understand technology. You got to look at currencies from all over the world just to see what they're doing, and looking at the design. You got to look at so many different things and just try to apply those things when it's time to design.
Interesting, definitely. So who decides what goes on the bill?
That is the Treasurer of the United States, and mainly the Treasurer of the United States. And that person is the person that decides what it looks like. But the issuance of currency is actually the Federal Reserve Board.
Oh, so there's definitely a board.
There's definitely a board, and there are so many different stakeholders that are involved in the process of banknote design that we have to pay attention to. We have to work with them in order to actually produce this note or different banknotes.
So would you consider it a tedious process?
Extremely tedious.
Does that make it more difficult?
No, I kind of enjoy it. It's almost like a rush to a certain degree. Because you kind of see all of the work that went into it and all the different layers and just understanding what things will do, how they work. And when you finally see the finished product, it's like, whew, you take a breath. Like, okay, it's finally done. What's the next project? It's almost like the next rush to a certain degree.
How long would it take for you to get that rush?
It depends. The 100 took about 10 years.
Wow.
It took 10 years because we had 2 administrative changes. That was the only reason. But it takes some time to really do something that's being circulated. You gotta understand, currency in our country, I think 20% stays in the US, 80% goes overseas. So we're talking about an international banknote. Wow. So when we design it here, it's going all over the world.
So you've made a lot of history.
But see, me being kind of laid back and just humble to a certain degree, I really don't look at it that way. I'm just looking at like, okay, what's next? I always have the what's next approach, because I really don't want to get stuck in time where you get stuck on one project or one feat that you've had in your life, and you can kind of become very arrogant. But you also placate yourself, where you just stay in that zone. And then you want to always try to advance to the next thing. No matter what project it is, achieve it, look for the next thing, and always look for the next thing, and look for the And the reason I had that approach, I used to read books on W.E.B. Du Bois. That's how he approached things. He would wait for the next feat and then work for the next thing and then the next thing. And he never looked at himself. He was always looking at how can I affect everyone with what I've already achieved.
Wow. So apprenticeship was just the beginning.
That was just the beginning.
And you definitely didn't stop there.
Nope.
Are you stopping here?
No. Now, my ultimate goal at the end, honestly, is actually end up at a HBCU somewhere being a professor somewhere teaching the art of currency design at some point. This is a craft that needs to be taught. Yeah. Not to produce counterfeiters, but to actually show them the art of how you do this, and it's an amazing art. It's not talked about because of the security that goes into it, but there's a way to teach it where you can teach people how to just love how this looks, and what goes into it and the different effects of it. It's a piece of artwork. The 100 is where I looked at it. I always looked at it as art, but I think for the U.S. citizens or people around the world, they looked at this piece as a piece of artwork, the 100, for the first time. When I started hearing songs, artists, rappers naming themselves Blueface. It's like, okay, this is interesting. And I think it hit me hard when they actually someone actually paid someone to do a mural of me in L.A. Wow. And I went out to L.A. last year and saw this mural right around the corner from Kobe Bryant. And I was like, okay, this is another level right here.
I would say that's amazing, but I do want to say that's very admirable, and I love people like you who think that way. Me being a film major, I like to see everything as art. Like, the average person wouldn't think, designing a $100 bill is artwork, but the fact that you're sitting here today explaining to us how much work and dedication and art goes into it, it's very admirable, and that you have the gift to show everybody that there's more to things than just paintings and drawings. Art is anything.
Right.
So whatever you go into, whether you're a businessman or you're an accountant or even a doctor, the work you do is art.
Right.
And you should see it as such. So as far as, like you said, you've designed other bills. So what other bills have you designed?
The 50 face, which is the current 50 that's out right now. A little bit of 20 because it was a team effort on the 20. I was actually a part of a series of currency of the Bank of Eritrea, and I actually helped Mr. Clarence Holbert with that project. Here's what's interesting about that project. I was an apprentice at the time he was a journeyman, but Clarence had not had an opportunity to design an American banknote yet because we weren't redesigning at that time, and nor Sharp. But when it came down to Clarence finally, you know, all those years of learning this stuff and all those years as a journeyman to actually get a chance to design a banknote, I helped him with the technology part of it, and I pulled back.
And you just let him.
I wanted him to get
Right.
his glory on that because he had worked so many years as a banknote designer and just never got a chance to shine in it. And that program, what he did is huge. I think he had a couple of things in the Smithsonian. When you look up the Bank of Eritrea currency design, his face comes up. That's how that's supposed to go. And I said, Clarence, I'll get my turn. I'll get my chance. No big deal. And actually, when the 100 came out, Clarence called me.
Wow.
He said, "Man, great job."
That's amazing.
It came back full circle.
Came back full circle.
That's amazing.
But no, that's really amazing how you can let someone have their moment to shine and then you get your next moment, because that's what our community is about. It's about lifting each other up and celebrating when one of us achieves anything.
I think it's about integrity too, is knowing that you got to give somebody their props.
Right.
Period. You'll get your chance, but there's nothing wrong with pushing somebody forward when you're one pushing.
Right.
Definitely.
There's nothing wrong with that. You'll get
Absolutely
yours.
not.
One day somebody gonna push you forward.
I was about to say, yeah, you can let somebody have a little slice of the cake too. It's okay. You don't got to eat it
Right.
all.
But I think social media, and I'm just gonna plug this, changes that whole perspective, and I think that's sad. We're not born that way, you know. But social media puts this edge where it's just negativity all the time, where negative is actually applauded, and positive is looked on as negative. And I think that's ridiculous. We got to flip that switch. We got to change that around.
Social media is very powerful.
It's very dangerous too if it's in the wrong hands.
Exactly. Like anything else with power, if it's in the wrong hands, it's going to take you to the wrong places. But so I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is like a detailed question because I spent a couple of days just looking at the $100 bill.
That she did.
With a magnifying glass. I really want to know if there's some details that you know everyone overlooks.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
But you know for sure, like.
So it's not that people overlook them. There are some things that you want the general public to look at, and it's in a public campaign that the Bureau puts out and the Federal Reserve puts out for everyone to focus on to authenticate whether this is a genuine note or a counterfeit. There are some small details that are for the Secret Service to look at. When you grabbed your glass, those are things they look for. So that's what I say, there's so many layers to it.
I probably still missed it.
No, I don't think you missed anything. You know, if it's something that's visually there, it's something that they would normally look at, because all it takes is somebody to pass a bad note in a bar, right? But if you don't know what you're looking at, it passes. But if you know what authentic looks like, then you're good to go. So I tell everyone, please study your money. Look at it, you know, touch it, feel it. You know, Intaglio has raised print on it. You know, you can feel the the texture of it. Pay attention to the designs. I know it's commerce where you're just spending it. You know, hate to say this, but when guys go to the bar, they just drop buying bottles. I hate that kind of terminology, but these are facts. They're not paying attention to what they're paying these bottles for.
Well, we would love to continue this conversation, but we do have to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for more at Today from Bowie.
At Bowie State University, students develop the skills to become experts in a wide range of fields, including technology, communications, biology, fine arts, education, and business. Bowie State students are preparing to become tomorrow's global leaders. A focus on entrepreneurship sparks innovative thinking and collaborative teamwork. Our legacy of academic excellence thrives with skilled faculty and interactive learning and state-of-the-art facilities. Bowie State is a leader in Maryland for graduating African Americans with degrees in biology and technology. Our energetic community includes a strong support system, championship athletic teams, and active student groups with countless opportunities for cultural, social, and intellectual development. Come build your future at Bowie State University. Learn more at bowiestate.edu.
Welcome back. We're here with Brian Thompson, who is an artist creator. So what's something that you wish you could spend more time doing?
Honestly, I'm ready to retire. So I can spend more time doing these kind of things,
Right.
and talking to students and just kind of just let them know that the world of art is huge and to get into it. I don't think it's a fact of them. I just think people just don't know about the different areas of art that they really can be employed in and be great in. You know, I look at companies like like illustration companies or industrial design companies, and I'm just going to be frank. A lot of the styles that we see come from our neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
So if they come from our neighborhoods, that means they're studying our neighborhoods, but they're not employing our neighborhoods.
Right.
And then they turn around and sell the same style to you a year later during that season. So who's getting paid? Those big companies. So I think we need to put pressure on those bigger companies to start investing into these particular areas where they're stealing these ideas and designs and color patterns. There's nothing wrong with employing and creating a think tank within the urban community where that think tank can now be paid for the information that they're giving the big companies to produce designs. What's wrong with that? I think that's something that actually should happen. Or someone come up with an idea to make a think tank within these, minority communities where they have to pay you for the information before they produce it.
Starting out in the job, of course, things that were back then are their newer versions now. So as far as like starting the job to where it is now, how have you adapted with like the new technological advances as far as when it comes to printing and designing and, artistry and all that?
So I would say the fundamentals stay the same. You just have to look at the new technology as new tools.
Right.
Because if you don't look at it as new tools, you'll be kind of like intimidated to learn it. But if you look at it like a regular pencil, and say, oh, this is a part of my palette,
Right.
or my art palette, or my pencil, or just something else to enhance, the job more. If you look at it that way, then it's easy. It's easy to kind of move those things into, your everyday job to a certain extent, and not be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. People get so intimidated by technology sometimes, but you got to look at it like, is this a component I can add to what I already know, and just let it flow. Just let it flow. Let it become a part of your everyday, life, and not be intimidated by it.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little intimidated by Photoshop and Illustrator. I still haven't gotten over them graphic design classes.
Right.
But yes, like you say, you can't get intimidated by it because at the end of the day, there's going to be new skills that you do learn that you're going to have to add to your everyday life.
Right.
So that's amazing as well.
Yes.
So with all of this new software and, technological advances that we just spoke of, is it safe to say that you have a favorite program, or is it the pen and pad?
I'm an old school dude. I'm pen and pad. I'm pen and paper. I'm paint. I want to get my hands dirty on stuff.
What type of paint do you like to use?
I use acrylic. I don't like oil paint.
Acrylic paint.
Yeah, acrylic paint, you paint, it dries. Oil paint stays, it just takes so long to dry. I get the point of it because people like to go back in and kind of fix things. I'm just very detailed. I want to get that detail right the first time, and I'm finished.
And then just be out.
And be done with it.
So watercolors are out the question as well.
I actually like watercolors.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I actually like watercolors.
Beautiful
See, that's that fluent side
And
that I
right,
like.
it gives you that different
Yes,
texture that you can
right,
see.
right.
So speaking like how you said on the side you do paintings and drawings, do you ever look back at old designs or old paintings that you made and wish you could add or take something from it?
No, because with art, okay, and I'm gonna get a little spiritual here.
Okay.
One thing about being an artist is very prophetic. Prophets seal time, and they can foresee, or they can actually see what's right in front of you. With being an artist, we can seal time or stop time and freeze time with a painting. So if I painted something in the 80s, people will look at it in 2000s, and they're like, oh, that was done in 80? You see what I mean? We can
Right.
seal time, and that's very prophetic to me. And that's, me as an artist, that's just how I feel about it. You know, I'm sealing time every time I create something for somebody to look back and say, I wonder how that was done or when that was done. It makes people reflect back and think.
Exactly. It's like a timestamp almost.
Yeah, it's literally a timestamp.
So, with the timestamp thing, what time era is like your favorite art created in?
Oh, the 80s. I'm an 80s kid. Yeah, when hip hop was, at its peak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that Public Enemy, EPMD. I'm that old school hip hop. I can't call it old school. It's my hip hop.
Yeah.
Y'all call it old school, but that's my era. Because they were talking about different political things that were happening, the things that were happening in the streets. They were talking about police violence before it became a thing.
Right.
We were talking about it because it wasn't being addressed, but it was in our songs.
And in our artwork as well.
And
'cause I
definitely in
know
our
they definitely
artwork,
did.
because that's what graffiti artwork actually
yeah.
portrayed. It portrayed all those things that was happening in the streets.
I'm about to say, and that's another thing about art too that I love is that you can get a message across just by a simple image. You don't even need words.
Yep.
You can use imagery, you can use different brush strokes in the paint. It doesn't matter as long as you can get that message across through the image.
I just did a painting for the Commanders.
Oh, okay.
They actually called several artists that were in the area and asked us to come to the stadium to actually do paintings that were dealing with, kind of like violence, not violence in the street, but solving violence in the street. I forgot what they called the program, but I actually did a police officer throwing a ball to a kid, but that wasn't my first choice. My first choice was actually drawing a gun that was tied in a knot, and they said, "Oh, we really can't explain that." I was like, "Okay, let me just go a little lighter." So I went a little lighter and had a Hispanic guy throwing a football to a black kid just to kind of lighten the load.
Right.
But that was cool to do because the NFL is now they recognize that it was a racial disparity too with racism and things of that nature, and I was cool to be a part of that project.
Why do you think art is important to society?
Art is important to society because, like I said before, it freezes time and it causes people to ask questions of what happened at that time when I'm seeing this piece. They have to ask those questions. I think if we didn't have art, life would be boring. There's an artist that created every fabric we have on our body, this chair, this table, everything that we deal with on a daily basis, an artist created that. There's some rendering somebody did to create this particular piece.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to the audience, and thank you to the viewers back home. I'm Keva Wright.
And I'm Gabby Brown.
Be sure to tune in next time at Today from Bowie. So we got a question here. So happy talking. Yeah.
Cool.
You good to go? You good to go?
We have so many questions.
Let's hear it for bold. Because bold is bright, and bold is brave, and a world without bold would be a whole lot less everything. You see, bold dreams in color, speaks in all caps, and writes with a rhythm that moves us all. Bold makes you think, bold makes you see, and it makes itself seen from the boundaries of space. Bold braces for impact. Bold eclipses expectations. Bold turns every what if into a let's do it and doesn't let up till it's done. Because bold is fearless. Bold is tireless. Bold is tenacious as a bulldog with something to prove. It takes to the stands its ground, knows what counts, and stands up to be counted. And while everyone else is looking the other way, Bold is busy breaking barriers, pounding on doors until they open, and laughing in the face of one day. Because Bold goes first and takes first place. And the only last it knows is how to leave a lasting impression. Bold takes on big ideas. Bold takes on the world. Bold takes on tomorrow. Bold takes all kinds. And it takes one to know one, and you are one. The world needs more Bold, a lot more Bold. And Bold is what we and you do best. Bring your Bold. We want to see big things from you. Bowie State University. We are Bowie Bold.